he just took the first 5 minutes of my introduction, so I can just jump right into all the things. So, but yeah, I am Amanda. I've been around for a little bit. I've gotten to do a lot of really cool things and travel a lot. The beautiful game has done a lot for me. Two kind of just quick things. I'm an elementary school teacher at heart, so you were just given a handout. Every other document that you've received has been, I'm sure, way fancier than that, to the point where Mark was like, hey, can you share your document? I said, I already did. He's like, it just has a bunch of hats on it. I said, I already did. They'll figure it out once they get there. So use it as you can. I'll kind of explain it in a second. Hopefully you guys receive this better. I practiced on my puppy dog this morning, and he fell asleep about 3 minutes into my first point. But it was a long night. It's fine. You got him. So, but we're going to jump right in. As he said, we're talking about the roles of a coach today, hence the little hats. I don't often make it a practice to wear a hat while I'm presenting to a room full of people, but I'm a prop person and an elementary school teacher, like I said, so here we are. When we are in coaching, a lot of the things that comes to mind with me, and again, I'm not going to go through the introduction that I had because he just explained it. Know yourself, know your objective. If you hear this through that lens, I think it'll be really, really helpful, because at the end of the day, if you don't know yourself, you don't know who you are, the role that you play starts to become irrelevant, right? And so as you're taking notes and drawing on the fun little handout that you've got, just kind of keep that in the back of your head. 1 Corinthians 12, it talks through how we are members of one body. I did pull it up just in case I didn't butcher the quote here. So for just as one body has many members, and all the members of the body, though many are one body, so it is with Christ. And then if you scroll down to verse 20, it says this, and as it is, there are many parts, yet one body. And so as I was tasked with communicating the roles of a coach through the gospel lens, that was kind of the mindset that came back to me. So when we are a coach, you are one person, but you do wear many hats. And that is kind of the fun way that we'll kind of demonstrate a little bit of what's going on. And so we have 6, hence my 6 really intentionally designed. Which ones? I got a little nod to a couple things. We got some Hornets, we got some U.S. Soccer, we got some Charlotte Christian, and some Jeep Life. So we got a lot of things covered up there. So what this is going to help you do, hopefully, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes to let your inner child out. I'm not going to show you mine because it's all of my notes in there, but use the hat to talk through kind of what it looks like. So how I've done it, I put the name or the role of a coach on the brim of the hat, and then as it's coming in, there's one space. We want to do this. So the role or the name, what is the action of that name, and then what's the result of that? And so I'll give you an example in a second, but I want you to take a minute and fill this out. I'm going to give you the first one that we're going to talk through, and it's a teacher, right? The role of a coach, first and foremost, you are a teacher, right? A teacher, what is the action of a teacher? You train, right? What is the result, hopefully, of training is learning. And so, right, I mean, if I'm putting on this first hat, right, we've got this, looks a little silly. So how I did this, I have teacher, and then I put in the top train, and then it learns. And so what I want you to do, you can talk to a friend, you can do it by yourself, you can fill in all 6 to what you think might be different roles of a coach, the roles that you play. You can leave it at 1, you can leave it at 2. I'm going to go through all 6 that is kind of outlined in the manual that the Eagles have used in their coaching world. But again, this is 1, and there's probably a lot. So I'm not going to give too much time because we're going to talk it through in detail. But take a minute and just kind of think for yourself, what different roles might you play as a coach using teacher as your first one? And again, have a little fun with it. All right, we'll jump in, and again, feel free to take some notes and draw on the side, do whatever. I definitely don't want to press you for time, but I don't want to cut you short at the end either. So again, to reiterate, teacher, by nature, I think this one probably comes the most natural for coaches. I would assume that a lot of you in this room got into it for relationships, which if I were to back up and have given my full introduction, my why truly comes down to the relationship piece. And I'll explain a little bit of how I got into that a little bit later. But at the end of the day, if I can build relationships with these kids that are lasting, then I feel like I've done my job. But because of that, again, I'm a teacher. I was an elementary teacher for 12 years before I moved into admin. And so teaching comes the most naturally to me, which is part of why I wanted to start there. At the end of the day, what I hope that my kids get out of this is I don't want to dictate every single thing that they do. And so my job in training environments, in game environments, in off-the-field environments, can they listen to the things that I'm saying, to the drills that we're doing, to the concepts that we're talking about, and then can they go play? Can our kids then have the freedom to go play with how I have taught them without me having to do that? And I do think, again, sitting in this room, how many different teaching styles do we have, right? I think there are 60 people, give or take. There's probably 60 different variations of a teaching style. Some people are really loud and they talk the whole time and they are speaking at a high volume the whole practice, and some people are standing and watching and say something every so often and grab a kid off to the side. So there's no wrong teaching style, assuming that we're all building up our kids as we're doing it. I know for me, my teaching style was a lot of teachable moments versus stopping the play. And so I would challenge you to find what is your teaching model? What is the way that you feel most comfortable teaching to your kiddos so that they can then train and then learn what you're trying to do? One thing for me with teaching, I started realizing, and I'm not sure how many of you, again, I teach or coached high school for the most of my career. I started realizing a few years ago the extreme level of anxiety that these girls were feeling when they would walk on the soccer field. It is fascinating to me when they would walk out and they're like, what are we doing today? What fitness are we doing today? Are we playing 11v11? Are we doing small side? Are we playing over the river? Are we playing flying changes? Are we just playing, what are we doing today, coach? And so what I actually started doing, I had a little black book, and I would show it to them. They knew that the little book that was in my pocket or the little book that I was holding in my hand, it had the entire plan, who was on what team, what the timing of everything was, what part of the practice we were doing the fitness, and then when they got to play at the end. And for them, you could almost see everything kind of lift a little bit. And then for me as a teacher, it allowed me to actually finish my training session because they weren't always just waiting to see what would come next because they already had all the answers. And I do think that that's a little bit age dependent, right? Like you're not going to show your U7 team your practice plan and say, all right, kids, now we're going to start here and go here, because then they're going to be looking at their Apple Watches and be like, wait, you said at 9:07 we were doing this, coach, and it's 9:08, so we got to go. But I do think as it's appropriate for you, can you be transparent with your kids as to what you're teaching, what your learning objectives are so they know what the goal is as you're going throughout your session. And I do think that continues to have healthy relationships with your kids. So teacher, that's kind of the first one for me. So if I put teacher hat, now we're going to throw on our mentor hat. Okay, that was kind of the second one that's in there, mentor. And so if we're doing it with the same kind of system that we have, what is the role? The role is a mentor. The name is a mentor. The action of a mentor is that they model, okay? And then the result of modeling is that it can get applied. And ultimately, as a mentor, can you now leave an impact and influence on your kids where they then can apply what you've demonstrated, and then they can apply it to wherever they're trying to go, whether it's on the field or if it's in a classroom or in their friendships or certain things like that. One of my favorite things that I got to experience, I'm not a mom yet, I'm a dog mom, but I'm not a mom, and a couple years ago, I got a Happy Mother's text. It was the most random thing, and it was most life-giving I think I've probably ever gotten, and it was one of my players in high school at the time, and she sent me a text on that Sunday in May, and she's like, hey, coach, this might be weird, but I just want to say Happy Mother's Day because I know that you're not my mom and I know that you're not a mom, but what you demonstrate to me shows me the kind of mom that I want to be when I do get to become one. And I thought, man, I don't know, I'm certain that I make mistakes on a daily basis, but that was so life-giving for me that she saw the intentionality that I put into relationships with those players. And I think that word intentionally or intentionality continues to come back to me. None of these roles are going to come supernaturally or just happen, right? A lot of the roles that you play, the hats that you wear over the course of your season and over the course of your recruiting, over the course of your couple years, however you get your players, you have to be intentional to create this space for yourself. It's not just going to happen randomly, especially when you're trying to do so many things at the same time. Because how many times, truthfully, Like I start the practice pregame with a girl, counseling her maybe, having a hard conversation, right? Like I'm mentoring her, I'm talking to her, and then 5 seconds later I'm switching and I'm like, okay girls, now we're at practice today and here's our first drill and we're gonna do this. And you're constantly switching these hats every single 5 minutes sometimes as you're going through that training session or game. And so mentor. Some of the other things, again, for those of you that were on my panel yesterday, I kind of used this a little bit, but your players are always watching. They're watching everything. They're listening and they're watching. They're watching, hey, how does my coach talk to the refs? How does my coach talk about other players? How does my coach talk to their assistants? Are they talking down to them or are they treating them as equals? Are they talking poorly about other players? I cannot believe that she's so bad today. Holy cow. What did she eat for breakfast, right? Like, girls hear that and they're like, oh man, if she's talking like that about her, I wonder what she's saying about me, right? And then some of that trust then between me and that player gets broken. And then when I do try to then go have that hard or real relational conversation with her, I have lost all credibility because of how I've carried myself. And so if our goal is to model the behavior, we have got to be thorough with doing that. And again, part of what I said last night, you can't put out and give to these players what you're not willing to get yourself. I was hoping she was here, but she's not. Little stinker, she bailed on me. One of the greatest decisions I ever made in my young coaching career. I went to Messiah. I had a decent career at Messiah, and I was so excited to pursue coaching after Messiah, and I was like, I am gonna do Messiah 2.0 down at Charlotte Christian. And man, was I mistaken. I was like, give me 2 years, guys, and I got this. We had never won a game at Charlotte Christian, and guess what happened 2 years later? We still had not won a game. Like, it was so disheartening, and I was like, all right, well, now what do I do? Well, someone very kindly had told me, like, hey, you need to get over yourself. Fair point. I'm 24. I'd never been a coach before. I'd only ever been a player. So how am I going to grow and mentor these girls if I don't have a mentor myself? And so the greatest choice I ever did was have a little bit of humility and hired Becky Hilton, actually, some of you may know her, and I asked her, I said, hey, can you come alongside me? You have 20 plus years of experience. You've been a college coach, a professional coach, a high school coach, a youth club coach. You have more experience in your pinky finger than I have in my entire body. Can you please come and join my staff and work under me, but then show me what it looks like to mentor the next generation? And she, with great humility, was like, yeah, let's do it. And it was the greatest season that we had in year 3. We still, I think we won probably 2 games, but I could see a difference in my personality. She was able to name things for me that I didn't even know were in there. She was able to show me and model for me how I then could model for my players. And it was this like trickle-down effect, right? My mentor mentored me, and I was able to apply what I learned from her then to mentor the next. And so, again, still don't do it perfectly, but my advice or kind of encouragement for any young coach or older coach, it doesn't matter. I think we can always learn regardless of where we're at in our careers, but don't do what I did my first 2 years and say, I got this, I'm good. I don't need anyone's help. I'm gonna make this the Amanda Naeher program, and I wanna make sure that I've got my thumb on it, and if I bring someone else in, they might take some of the attention from it, and I'm gonna lose control. Let go of that control. Let go of it, because again, when we're wearing all of these hats, we've gotta have a little help. And it is so huge for these players to see how we can then absorb that mentorship alone, or as well. So, real quick, because again, a little pair and share. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. You can talk with a neighbor, a little pair and share here. What for you may be the most natural role that you gravitate towards? It can be one that you've written down on your own so far. It could be a teacher. It could be a mentor. We've got 4 more that we're going to go through quickly. So you've got about 1, maybe 2 minutes just to talk. What is the one that comes most naturally for you? Go ahead. Got a couple more, and then don't worry, if you thought pair and share was fun, we got turn and talk coming up, so it's coming up. All right, so we've done teacher, mentor, and now we're gonna talk about being a friend, okay? This to me is the most fun, but equally the most challenging. I think females by nature are very, very relational, and so this does come really naturally for us, but equally, man, have you ever tried to be friends with a high school kid and they just don't understand boundaries and that you're not their actual friend, but you want to connect with them like a friend, but you still got to be the authority, and so you can't really be there like 2 a.m., let's text about it, friend. But you want to know what's going on in their life, whereas guys, they're like, hey, man, can I punch you? All right, cool, we're friends, we got this, right? Like, guys are just funny to me, I don't know, but there is more depth there. I don't mean to dismiss that, but I feel like there's a lot of ways that girls will pull together relationally as friends, whereas guys, at least from what I've seen, and I did coach a couple of years with the boys, so I'm not completely out of it, they just want to compete together, and once they respect each other, that's when that friendship typically forms. At least that's in my limited knowing. So, but being a friend, again, to me, I think the biggest piece, if you hear nothing else, is to be present. And if we're following the model that we have, role, friend, what is the action of a friend? The action of a friend is that they listen, and then hopefully the result of listening builds trust, right? So if you're using your little hats or you're on the thing, you've got friend, we listen, and listening builds trust. And so we got our third hat here. So be present. I know that you guys know this because you're on the fields every day. Your players come with a elephant-sized backpack full of feelings, thoughts, emotions, hard, good, all the things, family stuff, friend stuff, relationship stuff, and they bring that to your field. And your job as a coach is to connect with them and be present. Hey, how was your day today? But mean it when they actually start giving you an answer, not like, man, coach, I'm so glad you asked because it was really hard. Okay, well, we'll talk about that later. All right, guys, we're going to start doing a little rondo here, right? Like, if you're going to be present with them, ask a question and expect an answer. Remember some little things. Hey, I know your mom was sick last week. How's she feeling? Hey, you had a big math test coming up today. Did it go okay? Hey, you were really sad on Friday because you had to take your dog to the vet. Is your dog feeling better? Like, whatever the scale of importance for them, it doesn't matter. It's all up here important. And can you, as a coach, connect with them on that friend level and be present with appropriate boundaries, right? And that's your individual journey to find, and that goes back to what Steve was talking about. What's your mission, right? If we know ourselves and know our objective is ultimately to bring the gospel to these kids, we do have to create boundaries for them. We cannot cross that line where we're now buddy-buddy with them. And so use your wisdom, maturity. Again, for me, that was a huge piece going back to the mentor thing. A mentor for me was able to help me create some of those boundaries, especially as a young coach. And now that I'm old, now I'm like, wait, no, please be my friend again. Please, wait, oh, you used to tell me everything. Oh, man, here we go. So now I've got to get more creative as I've gotten a little bit further and further removed from their age and try to find a way to connect with them. But listening leads to trust. I think at the end of the day, that to me is, I know that is the goal, right? But listening leads to that trust for you. If our ultimate goal is discipleship and bringing them into a relationship with Jesus, we can't just ask them randomly one Thursday, hey, how's your heart today? Hey, what's your relationship like with the Lord? If you've never asked them how their day was, right? And so take that time to build from the ground up, start being a friend, start asking some of those little questions to build trust between you and them. And then when those bigger things come up, you can pull up a seat, grab a cup of coffee, go share a meal with one of your players, and truly get into the weeds then of what their life looks like and how you get to be part of it. And then follow through. I think, at least this is kind of off the field stuff, the hardest friendships for me are when trust has been broken because there's been a lack of follow through. If someone says they're going to do something and they don't do it, all of a sudden now I'm disappointed. And so equally as a coach, even in little things, if I say, hey, if you miss the bus, you're not playing today. Well, what if my best player misses the bus? Am I still going to follow through? Because everybody's watching to see what happens, right? And so my actions continue to either build trust or break trust, and that completely ties together with how you are going to treat them as a friend. So intentional how you approach this, boundaries, and then ask questions for them. Fourth one for me, now we're at least into the middle part of practice here. We've worn all of our hats at some point, I promise you that. Now we're going to talk about being a motivator. As a coach, your job is to motivate. And if we're following kind of our run here, we've got motivator kind of on the brim of the hat. The action of a motivator is that they inspire. And then hopefully the result of inspiration is that there is effort. okay? We need to have effort out of our kids, right? That's ultimately one of the things that we need to have. We would never wish for a team that has a bunch of players that are just walking around and hoping that something goes their way. One of my not-so-proud moments at Messiah, I was a senior, junior was there, we were doing one of the famous passing patterns. It was a hot day in August, we had done it 100 times, we're doing this thing, and one of the girls messes up. She does the wrong pattern, and all I did, truly, me and my motivator hat, I was like, nope! And I literally just kept doing the drill, and she's like, well, that was rude. And I instantly was like, she's not wrong, that was rude. Everything in me was like, okay, let's retract that for a second. I'm a senior, I'm a captain. My role here is supposed to be a leader. She makes one mistake on a hot day after a lot of preseason days, and I just yell nope in front of the entire group. Yikes, that's the opposite of motivation, right? You better believe that did not motivate her to spike up her effort after that, right? And so it took me having to apologize at the next water break, and then probably 3 more water breaks after that as well, to get that. But motivator for us, can our words and can our motivation to them maximize their effort? Your job, your role as a motivating coach is to draw the absolute best out of your players. How can you maximize their potential to the best of their ability? And that's different for everybody, right? And again, I think part of wearing different hats is understanding your kids are motivated by different things. One of my biggest pet peeves in listening to other coaches is when they just scream across the field, it's gotta be better! Cool. It probably does have to be better. What has to be better? Does my touch have to be cleaner? Do I need to run faster up the sideline to be able to get behind the defense? Do I need to recover in the middle instead of recover on the wing? Like, be specific about what your teaching is. And especially with these kids, they need to hear something specific. Whether, again, little ones at U10 or even these big boys and girls at the college level, be specific. Use your words to inspire them so that you can maximize their effort. One of my favorite movies is Remember the Titans. And if you remember the scene in the movie, the refs are cheating, they're throwing flags on everything that are not flags, and all of a sudden, the coach whose Hall of Fame career is on the line, he realizes what's happening, and he's like, I got to do something. And he does, right? He walks up to the referee, and he says, I know what you're doing. It's going to stop, or I'm going to report you and all the different things, right? And he goes back to those boys, and he says, they don't get another yard all night, right? And those boys are looking at him like, Coach, they've been calling a flag on me breathing tonight. And he's like, I took care of it. I've got your back. They don't get another yard all night long. That's at least how I see the story, right? And so for them, they saw that their coach believed in them and fought for them, and then he turned it around and he used his words to motivate them. And again, what happens? They didn't get another yard all night. And the other team walks away bruised and beaten, and they followed through. That motivating speech or words, it doesn't happen if you're not willing to then do the hard, right? Let those players see that you're willing to fight for them and have their back, and that will, I promise you, maximize their effort. One of my proudest and not so proudest moments all at the same time is when I walked onto a field while the game was still happening because one of my players was being treated unfairly. The game was literally still going on. She had been punched in the chest, and the call was on her somehow. She was given a yellow card for getting punched, and the ref was saying, free kick, other team. I'm going, she's on the ground. The goalkeeper puts the ball down, and she plays. I'm literally on the field and screaming at the referee and everything else. And again, not my proudest moment. I for sure got a yellow card in that. But what came out of that was every single person on that field, they knew that I had her back. And I was willing to take that yellow card and have that awkward meeting with my assistant athletic director at the time because ultimately she was being treated unfairly and she needed to know that, hey, I, as her coach, have her back. And so what happens the next time? She's running harder and harder and harder. So again, little things, but can you find little moments within your story to help motivate those kids, inspire them, get them to know that you believe in them and so that you can maximize their effort. I'm getting a little short on time here, so we'll go only 1 minute at this point, and then we've got our last 2, which kind of connect to other ones. So we'll turn and talk. You got 1 minute though this time. We'll turn and talk. What is the hardest role for you to connect to? What is the hardest role for you to connect to? Awesome. Believe me, I wish that we could do this and like the dialogue piece all day, but definitely want to be respectful of kind of their timing. So we got two more. You guys are doing awesome. Hopefully you're enjoying a little coloring activity as we go. Two more. We have an encourager, right? That's our fifth one, encourager. And again, if we're following the chart that we've been using, the name, we have an encourager. Action is they empower, and then the result is they have confidence. I'm going to skip kind of to the end of this and cut my notes in half a little bit. The reason I got into coaching was my dad, okay? A little backstory. I'm a twin, and so me and my twin sister, we grew up little gym rats. He was the varsity boys basketball coach at the school we grew up at going to. And from like 18 months old, me and Alyssa would be like sitting on the stage, dribbling our little basketballs, just watching him in the gym with the boys. And what I noticed about him and his style of coaching, he was the definition of an encourager. And it was so fascinating to me, even at an early age, because what I'm watching him do is, and this is in the old school days where you could actually make kids run without a parent yelling at you for it, he would have, and I'm not kidding you, he would have 6 trash cans in the corners of the gym and then by the doors of the gym. And those boys would run and run and run. They had basketballs over their head, and they would run and run and run. And a lot of times they'd stop, find a trash can, let it go, and then they'd run and run and run. And I'm sitting here like, why do they keep showing up? But I'm listening to my dad. See, I get emotional every time. I'm listening to him talk to those boys. He's like, you got it. Come on, you got it. One more lap. I don't care if you threw up, just one more lap. Give me one more. You got it. You're awesome. You are a great player. You are awesome. I mean, all the time. That was his motivation for those kids and his encouragement. And they showed up every single day and still come back to his office. There's one guy that always makes me laugh. He's like a legitimate Black Hawk flight guy, special ops, like super hard ass, sorry, but he is like, oh my goodness, he comes into my dad's office and he's like, Coach Naeher, and then he leaves, and I'm like, the respect that he still has for that man because of the relationship that they had when he was in high school, and now he is a 42-year-old, 20-year military veteran who like does really crazy things for a living. That to me is what this is. Like, if you hear nothing else from this whole thing, be an encourager. He showed the gospel to those boys every single day that they came in the gym because of how he treated them, how he talked to them, how he showed love to them, right? He never stopped telling them and reminding them who they were, not what they did, right? He loved those boys, and in return, they showed up, and they showed up for him. And so he was, in my opinion, the definition of the encourager. And when you do that, you will see your kids stand a little taller. You will empower them to have the confidence to go into hard things, whether that's a game they don't think they can win, whether that's a conversation they don't think they can have, whether that's a relationship that they think is really, really hard. You will, with your words of encouragement, you will empower them to have the confidence to be the men and women that the Lord has created them to be. And there is nothing better than seeing those kids finish and coming back and saying, man, thank you. You were really hard on me, but I know you love me. You always were encouraging me. You never stopped motivating me. You were a friend, right? And I looked up to you, and you demonstrated what it looked like to love the Lord and love me really, really well. And that then kind of ties into the last one is you're a shepherd. Ultimately, these kids' lives are in your hands, right? These kids and their parents have entrusted you to guide and to lead. And again, if we're a shepherd and our action is to guide them and care for them, the result is spiritual growth, right? Ultimately, that's the goal. You guys are creating disciples to then lead the next generation. And if you are willing and able to shepherd them and care for them, hold them accountable, love them well despite some hard decisions and some really good decisions, when you choose to do those things and you put the gospel first and you put them first, you will create a player that wants to play for you. But more than that, you'll create a player that then wants to go do something really great. Whether that's to be a coach themselves, like I did after watching my dad do it, whether that was to be a really great mom and know how to love their kids well, whether that's to be a really present dad because your male role model taught you how to be present because they were your friend and they modeled what it looks like to be accountable and friend all at the same time. The impact that you have with each and every one of these hats as you put them on and rotate them throughout the course of your practices, throughout the course of your games, throughout the course of your seasons, all of those things, it all ultimately ties back to, again, that verse in 1 Corinthians. We are one body. There are so many members and there's so many things that make up the body that we are. You are one person, but you wear so many different hats. And I know I wanted to be able to go kind of talk through and hear. I'm sure you all have a ton of other ones that you kind of thought through on your own, and I wanted to hear those, and maybe there'll be another chance that they can talk about it at some point. But this is a starting point. If you hear nothing else in some of these things, ultimately, to come up with these is know your why. Know why you're out there. Know what your purpose is. And if your goal is to help change the hearts of these kids, one, we got to point them back towards Jesus because I can't change their hearts. I can just model for them what it looks like and encourage them along the way to pursue the Lord in their own way. So anyway, I appreciate you guys. I talked really fast because we're a little tight, but I appreciate you guys for listening. Thank you.